All right. I'm Mark Fidelman, CEO of Fanatics Media. Joining me is Nick Cicero of Del Mondo. So, Nick, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thanks, Mark. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. Now, you and I have finally met in person at VidCon. I didn't get a chance to hang out at VidCon, but I heard it was just an amazing event. I've got to go next year. You have, a few sentences about your experiences there?
Yeah, a lot of energy and excitement around video and digital video in particular. So I think that this year was the 7th year of VidCon, and I think probably only the 2nd year that we saw your traditional agency and media and entertainment executives kind of attending it in full force. And so the types of people that I got to meet this year were really interesting, very high level, kind of like one of those South by Southwest in 2010 is kind of the vibe that I got all week. But yeah, I had a great time.
I saw a lot of females in Daisy Dukes shorts. Now, I don't know if this was the talent on YouTube or Snapchat or what, but it seemed very young to me.
Yeah. I mean, I I don't know. I don't know what to say. I guess that maybe there were a lot of areas where there might have been some of that. There's a lot of fashion and beauty bloggers and vloggers out there. So everybody certainly is trying to look their best. That's for sure.
Okay. All right. Well, with that, Nick, I was very pleased to meet you. I had no idea that you had kind of this company focused on Snapchat, and I'm glad we were able to meet finally in person instead of debating on Facebook and all the other channels that we debate on. And if I'm fascinated with it, I know the marketers watching this must be fascinated with it. So can you tell us what Del Mondo does in the social media marketing space?
Sure. So Del Mondo is a creative studio and technology company that helps brands, traditional brands as well as media companies, kind of produce and manage and measure content on Snapchat and other mobile video platforms. So to be a little bit more specific, what that means is we're helping, as you said before, there isn't a real deep understanding of analytics and insights on Snapchat. And so what we're doing is we're helping some of the largest brands mine insights and pull insights out about performance of content and about the makeup of their audience to really help them understand and shed a light on the types of people who are engaging and creating and using Snapchat and how they relate back to their brand. Then we're producing a lot of content for them. So we produce a lot of 3V ads, so the video ads on Snapchat, as well as producing content on behalf of brands and on their channels, just as like white label content production. And then we've built a multi-channel social video analytics tool around that. So essentially, we're helping them up front understand the audience that they're trying to reach on Snapchat. We help them produce that great content by ourselves and with influencers and with publishers on Discover. And then we try to wrap up all of those insights and provide it right back to them. So almost like a one-stop shop for everything on Snapchat we kind of handle right now.
Okay, and let's start with Snapchat analytics. We'll get into the campaigns that you're running and the influencers you're working with. But that's really been the big challenge, I know, not just for myself, but for other marketers. Can you tell us how you've either solved this issue or that you've brought some more visibility to it, or at least for the marketers that are working with you, you can take the analytics of the people working with them or the brand themselves and show them that, hey, this is what you're spending on it and this is what you're getting out in return?
Yeah, what we're doing on the Snapchat analytics and insights side is really, like I said, shining a light on the areas where brands were a little bit unclear. So having spent I don't know, over close to 2 years now, creating and building content on Snapchat, we have a lot of experience in watching the platform develop. So, personally, like I've watched this platform go from being without stories and just being a one-to-one messaging platform open to today's, really video-driven media company saturated type of platform that Snapchat has grown to be. So on the analytics side, kind of what we're doing is helping brands understand the performance of all of their owned content. So how well does the snaps that you're making on your own account perform? But we're also going in and tracking different elements of those stories and watching which parts and pieces of that get shared out to other platforms as well. So being able to mine insights on Twitter and Facebook, Instagram, around Snapchat content for the brands that we work with to be able to have them understand the content that leaves Snapchat and discussions that happen there. And then we're also, when we're running paid campaigns, we're also coming and bringing back the paid analytics that Snapchat is providing back to advertisers. And we're actually like putting it in context of their overall marketing mix. So a lot of companies are, probably getting used to integrating their Facebook paid spend into their overall media mix. Obviously, Snapchat is so new, and knowing the fact that you're either creating content or you might be working with influencers or partnering with other events or other sports leagues that might be interested in it. There's some action that's happening with your brand, and you need to figure out a good way to quantify it. And so we built a number of tools and different methodologies over the past 18 to 24 months that we're now working and implementing for brands. And some of it is very software driven. Others combine different aspects and pulling that together and using a lot of third-party tools as well.
Okay, so as a marketer listening to this, how close can you get them to really understanding some kind of return on investment, or at least, overall in aggregate, how many people are looking at the videos and images that they're putting out on Snapchat?
Yeah, so we do a really great job of basically providing them the understanding of owned viewership data around Snapchat stories. So for example, we look at Snapchat kind of like a television station in the palm of your hand. So each week our customers are producing regular content every single day, and we're looking and tracking the number of people who are actually coming to Snapchat, opening up their stories, being able to see, looking at those unique viewers and tracking that average every day and every week and being able to measure that change and establish a baseline is one great way of kind of understanding the viewership. We're also going in and pulling out different things like total views and pieces and tracking that over a time period. So being able to look and make that usable in a really easy system is something that we've prided ourselves on. But like I said, that's only one piece of the equation, right? Like it's just hardcore telling me the consumption metrics. A lot of it is putting purpose and meaning to those metrics. So just telling you that you had 1 million views on your Snapchat account doesn't really mean anything in the context of your overall marketing picture. So I think that a lot of what the real work that we do is using the consumption metrics around content on Snapchat and helping brands understand what that means in the context of their day. So a couple different examples of that. The first example is just time. So when we think about the time that people take, Snapchat is a very, and I'm going to use the word engaged, but not in the traditional way. There's a lot of hurdles that it takes to get to a piece of content on Snapchat. I have to open up the app. And every time I open up the app, it opens up to the camera, not back to my friend list. So right away, I have to swipe over. So I already have to take an action to know that I want to go over. Then I have to pick from my list and either start my story or scroll down and go to a person's name. Then I have to actually touch the name to then load a piece of content onto the screen. So with that, that's a lot of physical time that my device has been in my hand and that I actually have to be mentally engaged with an app to now pull up the UFC's Snapchat story. So when we know that users only spend 25 to 30 minutes on Snapchat a day, which is actually pretty significant, when we have a quantifiable area and time that people can go to a destination, and we're able to quantify the amount of time that people are spending engaged with our one piece of content, we can actually put that into context on average. So oftentimes for our client, like the UFC, we're making really, really engaging stories on their accounts during the fights and during the weigh-ins and at all the different stages of the UFC event process, each pay-per-view event that they have. And so when you actually look at some of the stories, so we created one story, for example, that was 130 snaps long, and people were spending upwards of 1 minute to 2 minutes long engaged with that content. So if you think about the fact that 50 to 60,000 people spent 1 minute touching and engaging with your content at a minimum, even if they've tapped all the way through, that's a lot of time, right? That's 50 to 60,000 people that for at least a minute, they were thinking about putting themselves in the mindset of watching video, but more importantly, they're watching the UFC content. Nobody goes through 130 frames of a Snapchat story by accident. You don't just open up a Snapchat story, put your phone down and walk away and be like, oops, I left it there. And it's certainly not the same way that a feed-based application like a Facebook or an Instagram will automatically start playing video in your feed. And it's very possible that could just be happening in the background. So it's an intent-driven platform. And I think that the biggest thing that we're showing people is there's only 24 hours in a day. There's only 4 to 5 apps that really take up people's time. Of the 4 to 5 apps, Snapchat is one that's breaking in there. And of the 30 minutes a day people are spending, we can actually quantify the amount of time that people are actually touching the phone and engaging with your brand. So I think that the consumption piece is huge. And so, I mean, I could like take a pause there for a second, probably.
Well, we'll dive a little deeper into that. I mean, there's no question the engagement, at least in terms of viewership, is there for Snapchat. But we'll get into more of the reasons why, for me as a marketer, it doesn't really matter yet. But let's go on first to talk about what companies are you working with, or at least that you're seeing from the sidelines, if you don't want to pick out any of the companies that you're working with, that are the most innovative on Snapchat. Meaning, these are the people that are, getting people excited about watching their stories every day. For me, it's ESPN. I like just watching ESPN stories on Snapchat. Now I know they've got different access than everybody else in sports, but it's still very cool. Are there some companies you're working with, or some of the companies that you're watching from the sidelines that you think that they're really doing a great job?
Yeah, the biggest, our probably our best client right now that we've done a lot of work with on Snapchat is the UFC. And so I can't say that I was a huge UFC fan before. I was a boxing fan. I wasn't the biggest UFC fan before I joined, but we've been working with them for probably 5 or 6 months now. And it's just been awesome to watch them grow. They've grown, they've probably doubled and close to tripled their audience in that amount of time. And I think that the interesting thing is that they're very willing to try a lot of different types of things. So what started off as just dabbling in bringing in some artists to try out some things on their account ended up being like bringing on like a full-time Snapchat correspondent and moving and structuring the different elements of all of their events. And even evolving to now bringing in different hosts and having very complex storylines when they actually are doing these live events. Trading accounts overseas and having people, in the UK take over. I think that the UFC, in my opinion, obviously we're very close to them, so I'm super biased on this, but I really do love the dedication that they have to trying new and exciting things. After building up a really, really strong organic presence, they now have gone in and doing, just like you said with ESPN, on Friday, UFC announced that they're going to be doing a partnership with Snapchat to do more of these live stories. So we actually got to go and test out and shoot some content for some of the live stories on the UFC account. And now that they've announced this kind of partnership, it's going to be even more opportunity to tell really, really great stories and use that Snapchat broadcast mechanism to put content inside of there. So UFC is probably one of the best I've seen. Always have tons of geo-filters that they use to populate their events. And on top of that, they're also like using the channel in a very goal-oriented way, right? So there's a very specific purpose for the types of content that get created. So it's very clear that 2 to 3 days leading up to an important pay-per-view event, we're building tune-in messaging and telling people where they can order the pay-per-view or where they could be tuning into or going and downloading the UFC Fight Pass to be able to watch this. So there's all those call to actions that get dropped into the Snapchat content. Even though we're making really, really fun and valuable content, it's pretty much like UFC Snapchat sponsored by UFC, where they let people know that, hey, we're doing all this great stuff, but we want you to go and watch the fight. You need to go and watch the fight. This is where you can go and watch it. Here's all the places that you can go and watch it. And then other times it's activating sponsors. And even now they're going and trying original programming that is completely separate from the show experience of going and watching a UFC fight. So they've just started this series called like Cooking with the Menace. And that is Dennis the Menace Henderson, I believe, and he's one of their popular kind of fighters. And he's doing like a cooking show on their Snapchat account right now. So they're taking somebody who's very popular in their community and in their fan base, and they're now like putting him in charge of their Snapchat and asking him to tell his own story every week. And so, I could go on, but that's why I like, because their spirit is so rooted in understanding that they need to build a great fan base because the fans go to watch these premier events every week or every few weeks. And it's very easy for them to measure week after week. Did more people buy this pay-per-view than the last pay-per-view? And there are a lot of factors that can contribute to that. But I think that we've done a good job proving to them that the volume of content and the viewership on Snapchat is a great contributing factor to the amount of tune in that we're able to get if we make it very well known that it's a convertible piece of content, right? And I think that's important too, is you can't just make something out there for art, because then it's kind of art, right? If you're a brand, and I know that you're really big on being able to prove that value, like you need to tie it to some type of goal in order to even have a chance to prove it as a business success. So I do think that that's one of the best things, is that the UFC tries everything, but they're very sure that whatever they try, that they know that there's a goal attached to that. And they hold us to a pretty high standard to keep them to that. So that's a good one. On the flip side, the fun ones that, other companies that we work with right now, Lowe's Home Improvement, Mike's Hard Lemonade. I love what we got to do with them for 3V ads, and others. We just started working with companies like MTV and Cisco. I'm a big fan of what Cisco is doing. Cisco actually does employee advocacy through Snapchat. So essentially they have had different employees take over the Snapchat account every day for, I think, like 75 days in a row, or some ridiculous number like that. They had, multiple executives. Their CEO has come on Snapchat with the employees, and they fundamentally are using that as a tool to talk about all the cool stuff happening all across the Cisco world, knowing that there are a lot of young, fresh out of college grads that are now going to work at Cisco, and they're trying to figure out a better way to communicate with them. And it might not always be the internal portal. And sometimes it might be in the fun, lighthearted way that Snapchat is. So when they do like, goofy dances, like they just did like the Running Man challenge, where they like made their own video of that, but like they're going behind the scenes and showing you that, or they're throwing their CEO up on the Snapchat, because that all the kids who are just young in the first or second year at Cisco are like, oh my God, our CEO is on Snapchat. And they'll think it's corny at first, but then they'll enjoy it. And they really do love this. And we've actually gotten so much great feedback from employees internally at Cisco who just basically say, hey, I love this. I love watching the Snapchat every day. I mean, I know that it's Cisco and I work here, but it's so funny that I like to say that I like this. And so we've had some really good feedback, and it's actually resulted in a lot of interesting conversations progressing internally at Cisco as well. So another that we're super close with, that we like, Jack in the Box, we just did some awesome activations for, tied in POS purchasing to Snapchat. Now this news, a bunch of others. I really like GE. We don't work with them yet. I would love to work with them, but I think that they do a great job of telling amazing stories on the platform. And obviously, like for somebody like GE, they have a lot of material to source, but they just do a really good job of not losing the aesthetic of Snapchat when they do that, and not making it too branded.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, those are very good examples. I haven't subscribed to UFC. I'm going to do that. It sounds like they're doing so. They're really moving the needle, and you seem pretty excited about that. And
oh yeah, we got a lot of cool stuff happening with the UFC. Very bullish.
Okay. And these stories are great. I really find them engaging. I like all the filters that you could put on them, even the funny eyes, and all the things that you could do live within these videos. I've listed my problems with Snapchat as a marketer several times. We don't have to go through them. I'm on record saying what they are. But now, and I'm talking even now, end of June, I still don't think it performs very well if you're an ROI-driven marketer, and marketers should avoid it for now. But I would love to hear your opinion on why I'm wrong here.
Well, I'm not going to say that you're wrong. I mean, to say like there's a huge extreme here, right? Nothing is ever 100% right. Nothing is ever 100% wrong. I think that today, Snapchat is probably not my first, if I'm like an ROI or a direct, really results direct marketer type of person. I'm not going to say that that's like, I got $1,000 and I have to spend my last $1,000 on a platform. It's definitely not going to be Snapchat today. And I'm telling, this is coming from somebody who absolutely loves Snapchat, and really believes in the value. It's not where you're going to put it if you need to make money, right? And if you need to sell something and you need to convert. I think that there are much better and closer avenues that can prove that conversion value, but it's getting there. So as an organic marketer, just like organic on any platform, like organic content today, you have to look at there are a lot of different other factors, right? When you ultimately are putting content out on Facebook or Twitter or YouTube or any place that's not your own, or you can't result in like a commerce transaction happening, there's always going to be that first level of having to convert them and get them off some way. And so I do think that, you know, the mobile nature and the video nature of Snapchat, the no links, making it very hard, like you can't like manually send everybody a link in the chat. So those pieces make it a little bit harder right away. But I do think that they're growing and they're doing other types of stuff. So on the organic side, like I said before, there are ways that if I were a brand, I could be using Snapchat's native features and measuring them. I could be a brand. I could run a national geofilter campaign, and I could have that geofilter double as a coupon that I could allow people to bring in that could very easily measure. And if that geofilter is only there for the amount of hours that you tell it to be there, and then it goes away. And sure, people could they could screenshot it, they could do all these other things, redemptions aside. If you run this Snapchat geofilter and people walk in and they have to show their phone and you have to punch something in, or you have to know and you register that code, and you do it in the way that isn't lazy, and everybody executes down to that level, you can measure that. You can measure that in a retail and a quick serve restaurant, and you could do it organically. But you could do that on Twitter and Facebook too. So I'm not saying that Snapchat is like, you're not lighting the world on fire with this concept of organic conversion that way. Now on the paid side, they're doing more and more, right? So they're coming out with app install ads. They've been experimenting with these swipe up ads, where these 3VI ads or these swipe up ads, like an advertiser can swipe up and it will take you to a landing page. And that gets us outside of the world, right? And that allows us to track you and to do everything like that. So they're getting there. But yeah, I think that you're not wrong. There definitely are better avenues if I'm a small to mid-sized business or a cash-strapped large national business, that I'm going to probably get a lot more return, or if I'm a direct marketer that I want to do that. But there's a different aspect about Snapchat. And if you are a personality-driven brand, if you're an emotional brand that is functional, that's useful in everyday life, I think that then it certainly does make a difference. That's why I think that companies like Red Bull and Nike, and of course your usual suspects, are going to do well, right? CPG that can show themselves being used. But there are other brands, like I said before, with Cisco, where you wouldn't expect Cisco to be such a great performer on Snapchat, but they found a unique point of view, and they found a story, and they found the right audience, and the creative storytelling platform seems to work for them. So I think that you have to, the smart marketers who understand will be able to tie those things together and recognize that nothing comes to you served on a silver platter. But yeah, probably the point A, if you start with A, I think that Snapchat, we're probably, you're looking at point A to N, whereas some other Facebook channels, you might be only at point A to D, and you can measure that conversion a little bit closer. So I think that there's evolution that still needs to happen, but I think that we're starting to see more. I really do think that the geofilters, the lenses, the geofilters themselves are huge. And I do think that there are a lot of brands that are probably underutilizing what you can do with the geofilter in real life, because it does require a little bit of manual sourcing of that type of stuff. But it's always tough. One of my first gigs, I worked with Subway in the Southeast. They were one of my first clients coming out of grad school. And, that the big thing for them was, we need social media, but they didn't know what that was. I mean, pretty much then it was just Facebook. This is 2008, 2009. And we created a Facebook group, and we gave out gift cards that had custom POS numbers on them just for Facebook. But still, if they redeemed that gift card and that person at the register didn't actually punch the number in because they were lazy, couldn't measure it. So and sometimes there's some workflow and logistical issues that you always have to figure out how to implement. And I think that that's always kind of the bane of corporate's existence with this move to digital, right? Is it's always a pain to activate everybody all the way down the chain.
Yeah. So does it bother you, or do you think Snapchat will change this? That somebody like the UFC, they're creating all this great content, and it just goes away in 24 hours. Now, I know you could download it, you could put it on other channels, but it's just not the same experience. I like that mobile experience of seeing a Snapchat in primarily, a vertical mode. Do you think Snapchat's going to change that for marketers, or you think that's going to be the way it is, and marketers got to get used to producing episodic content that they got to put out on a daily basis?
It's interesting. So like there's a philosophic view and then there's like a data backed view. So the philosophical view, I guess, is I don't know if the normal behavior of internet users is always search and find later after the fact. I think that maybe when the internet was first coming into existence, and maybe as the internet hit a scale, like as content was getting created, even though content has always exponentially been created, but still, like, we had to fill a hole, we had to fill a space up, like you fill up a library. Effectively, like, we filled up an internet pretty much already with a lot of stuff. And so there was that point where people didn't know, where people didn't know much about what was out there. I think that there was a more idea of going out and finding it, and so there's stuff having to be there. I think that today, that the user, your user who's under the age of 21, who is an internet user, they've grown up in an entirely different world of the internet, where it's been focused on creation, where they had creation tools and it was very easy to create. And I just turned 29, so I'm not saying that like I'm an old man or anything, but I was just, I think, on the cusp in my age, really, where a lot of that stuff happened, where we're just 1 foot in the outsides of, I knew about the goofy side of the internet and the old school, like pre.com bust type stuff. And then 1 foot into the MySpace era, right? MySpace, Friendster, LiveJournal, very easy CMS type approaches, forums, early forums and message boards, like nice forums and message boards, not like BBM stuff. Yeah. So I think that anybody who's 21 or under, it has come into a world of the internet where creation has been one of the first things that you think about. I get online and I can make things. Whereas I think that people 21 and older used to think, or we're in the mindset where I can get online and find things. And so I do believe that this new audience is very much in the Snapchat mindset, which does, like, they're viciously adamant about wanting to get in the minds of their users. I think that that's what their mindset is, right? Is the mindset is you're creating and consuming and creating and consuming. That's the philosophical. The data-backed answer is you can look at any Facebook, Instagram, Twitter half-life of content and see that there's a very, very small percentage of the overall user base that ever will see that post like after the first 30 minutes to an hour or more. I'm gonna, like, 30 minutes to like half-life, depending on what the platform is, and there's, subtle nuances per platform, but relatively, like, the half-life of a tweet is very, very short. And that's why you see a lot of brands having to publish a lot of content. Even Twitter today, the day we're recording this, they came out with this app that allows you to go and schedule posts based on the optimal time that, previously companies like Buffer and most social management platforms were trying to build that data in. Twitter's now just offering that to you because they even know that there's a scale and there's this algorithm and feed type issue. So when you look at that as the scenario of the world that we live in today, and an increasingly more pay to play type of environment, at that point, I'm like, if you're a marketer, what's the point of going and complaining again? Fundamentally, like, what you have with Snapchat is you actually get a 24-hour window where you know that you can go, that any user who is interested, or any place that you want to point that user back to your Snapchat account, for 24 hours, you'll be able to have all of that content up there. And they can watch your story as you want it to be played out from beginning to end, which is kind of like unseen in other platforms. Very rarely do I ever see like 2 Facebook posts from a brand in succession, or 2 Twitter or 2 Instagram posts is probably the closest thing that I can get, because a brand could relatively post that fast to be able to like squeeze them in there. So this idea of being able to like string and tie your stories together and know that a user always, if they see the snap that I'm posting this second and they haven't seen the one that I posted before that, they'll see that one before. So there's always like a context to your story, and that is why it's very linear. So there's some data behind that, but fundamentally, I think that the 24-hour half-life of a post on Snapchat is probably a lot better than even a lot of the long-term half-life of some of these things. But it's tough because it does disappear. And so that is also just a hard thing to wrap your brain around, because it questions your existence probably. Like, right? Like there's all these, there was, what was it, last year? There was this whole article that was 45 days to make a tweet. There was something like that. There was like a Digiday piece, and everybody was like, oh my God. So 45 days to make a tweet. And imagine if a brand was like, oh my God, it's 45 days to make a Snapchat story, but it's gone in 24 hours. But that 45 days to make a tweet might only be there for 30 minutes, and then it might get forgot by the next tweet. So I think that it's a tough thing for marketers to wrap their heads around. And certainly I understand that the video is like that. But remember, that's just organic. I think that there's a huge aspect of the paid side of Snapchat that's very valuable. Paid Snapchat video and vertical video doesn't go away. And on top of that, we're also seeing vertical video be adopted by a lot more platforms as well. Facebook Canvas ads will take full screen vertical video, and if somebody clicks into your Canvas ad, you can open that up and give them and deliver them a full screen vertical video experience now. News Corp just announced a partnership where they are going to be introducing the same vertical video unit on Snapchat across News Corp properties. And so, using your video buying platform of choice, you can, work with a company like Delmondo and produce really great vertical creative and serve it right into those places. So now that Snapchat has an ads API, and I'm somebody who's like a bigger advertiser, I can actually integrate a vertical video format in multiple places on Facebook, on Snapchat, and on some ad serving platforms, and I can start to build a little bit more creative around that or diversify my message. But I'm not losing that native experience, and that's what I think that the real selling point of the paid side is there's a lot of reach and scale, and actually quietly, if you're willing to take the time to meet with Snapchat, they offer a heck of a lot of targeting based on the data that they have. And so if you're willing to meet the level, and nothing is free in this world, and as a consumer app, it's they need to make money too. So I think that they have the ability to set the price, and so the value is there. But they do have that quality control filter, and so I think that the paid ads can be very useful for brands. But so often brands have been used to being able to take advantage of these social platforms and do stuff for free. Like this is why I like to compare television and Snapchat, because when they're very similar in nature because they are very much broadcast and consumption tools, and Snapchat has that. But at the end of the day, like, brands feel like they're allowed to have a place. Like, what brand has their own television station? What brand has their own cable channel? Like, very few or none of them. And so we have this idea that because we're on the internet and everybody's allowed to be a publisher, that like a marketer should have the right to be a publisher. And this is kind of where I differ from a lot of folks probably on the topic. But like, Snapchat is a consumer app, like Words with Friends. Like it's no different from them Farmville. It's there to make money. It's there, you download it and you use it. Granted, it has properties that are connective in nature. It is a communication tool. It is a messaging app. But like, Twitter and Facebook have been given a lot of weight and credit by the larger world. Like I said, there's a little philosophical, but like, they've been given a lot of credit by the larger world, where we're in the fact that they're like utilities that live on other utilities. So like, people use Facebook and Twitter as their lifeline. How like Facebook has a button that's supposed to alert other friends, but fundamentally it requires electricity and internet, or else that doesn't even work. You won't even know about your loved ones or anything like that if you can't charge your phone to get on the internet. So like, there's a weird piece that like Facebook and Twitter kind of play this telephone, mail, basic cable type of role, and that people think of them as utility. And I don't think that Snapchat thinks of themselves in that same type of way. And certainly I can't speak for them, but I do think that there's some level of brands thinking that they should be allowed to just publish and use this platform. And at some level, I think that you can, but that's why they have rolled out these paid systems, right? Is like, they want to work with brands and they want to let them tap into this audience, but like, it's their app. They made it. It lives on their world. So, just because they make it so other people can publish and make really fun stories doesn't necessarily mean that it's meant for you guys as brands to do that too. It's a little harsh, but like, I kind of can see their point there. And that's why we're really bullish on making the best 3V and paid video ads. And that's why I think that I kind of like it, because the barrier to entry is raised a little bit now. it does demand, if you want to target and reach that great audience on Snapchat and reach them mobily and get that engagement for 4, 5, 6 seconds on a video ad, you need to make us original great content for this platform, and we're not going to stand for anything less than that. And so I kind of respect that.
Yeah, I think if Snapchat were to come out and just say, hey, the way to reach your audience is through paid, and organic, you're just going to be limited. You have to live with that. Maybe you use it in a different way. I think, Snapchat would have more respect amongst marketers at this point. Now, I happen to agree with you. I think Snapchat is going to figure out how, as Facebook has figured out, and YouTube to some extent, how to really monetize this and not only make it valuable to brands organically, but also through paid. I think they're going to get there. I mean, they just got another hundreds of millions of dollars. So hopefully they're hiring people that understand marketers and how to make them happy while not ruining the user experience for everybody else that is consuming that content. I mean, they got to be real careful with that.
Yeah, I think they're pretty smart. I mean, they think that there's certainly people that understand, and you can see some of the hires. They brought us over some smart hires that used to work at Facebook and others. So I think that they're very much aware of that, and I feel pretty confident. Like, I think that they do have a lot of respect for marketers, but I think that they want them to. I think everybody wants everybody to make really good video. If we're going to be consuming all this video, why waste our time watching really crappy videos? And so we could all use to hold ourselves to a little bit higher standard of design, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, my issue as a marketer, if I'm not using paid, is I'm producing great video like you want me to, but it goes away in 24 hours and you can't link to it. So the people that see it are subscribed to me, but what about the people that aren't subscribed to me? And I'm talking organically. Now on YouTube, for example, not only does that content live there, it's searchable and it shows up in Google search results and it lives on forever. So that content has got a half-life of several years as opposed to 24 hours.
Mm-hmm.
But so let's move on from that. I want to get to some very interesting things that you're doing as well, and potentially you and I will be working together here. You're putting a deal together, or you're working with Al Roker's new company, where they're doing live streaming. And why don't you share with us, how you're involved with that?
Yeah, definitely. So, like we talked about earlier, Delmondo has built this awesome software platform. And basically what it does is it's a full creator management platform that has social video analytics around that. So like we said, being able to help brands measure the performance of video on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and YouTube and Snapchat. But we're getting really deep into live streaming. And so we were fortunate to meet Al Roker and the Roker Media team probably 4 or 5 months ago. And they reached out to us because they were really interested in the software platform that we were starting to build for other media companies to essentially allow them to have a backbone to build a really awesome network of creators on. And so what we're doing with them is our technology is the backbone of their new Roker Media, which is a live streaming network. And so essentially they have the best talent on YouNow and YouNow and Facebook Live and Periscope and all of these emerging live streaming platforms. And what they're doing is they're building and programming original shows and pairing them up with brands and essentially coming in and integrating brands in a lot of different ways with these live streaming creators. And so what Delmondo is doing is we're essentially giving them the tools to manage their creator network and to manage all of that. And so it's tools to help them understand the audience of the live streamers. So breaking in and getting deep down into the audience segmentation across all social to see like who is actually watching the streams. And it's also building cool live streaming analytics tools around that as well. So we're working with a lot of the major players to actually come up with really cool tools for streamers to be able to report back metrics back to these brands who are integrating live streaming into these shows. Live streaming is a lot like podcasting. And so there's a lot of opportunity to integrate regular and recurring sponsorship models into them. And that's something that hasn't really been developed yet. And the folks at Roker Media are very big into monetizing and helping live streamers monetize themselves. And so we're helping them work on a lot of really cool tech to get creators paid more for live streaming.
Great. And I know a lot of people watching this, a lot of marketers are still trying to figure out live streaming, not in terms of whether it's effective or not. Certainly, there are some people that are reaching hundreds, if not thousands of people every time they go live, even though it's not episodic. They just go live and hundreds of people will tune in. But what I think, again, like Snapchat, they're trying to figure out how to monetize this for themselves and whether there's greater opportunities than, say, a YouTube video that's saved and searchable and so on and so forth. Now, I can tell you the difference with live streaming is you can take a live stream and then put it on YouTube. So, despite the fact that you are live streaming, there's still a really long shelf life if you edit it properly. But
right.
How would you? So, I guess my question is, what do you see the future of live streaming is, and do you think it'll be as important as recorded video in terms, and put it in perspective of a marketer?
Man, that's very interesting. I think that as a marketer, live video requires a lot of attention. And so I think that for many marketers, the future of live streaming is going to have to be personality driven. And so I think that it's if you're going to use it in the same type of, you're not going to use live streaming network. I mean, I don't know if you're, but I don't believe that you're going to be using the live streaming networks of today, like the Periscopes and the Meerkats and the YouNows of the world, the same way that you use your Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram of the world, where you're like kind of scrolling through feeds. And so if I am a brand who wants to use, or a marketer who wants to use live streaming, I'm going to need to have a personality attached to that. And so I think that that's going to probably say, hey, I'm going to have a live stream and it's hosted by a really engaging talent, or I'm going to have an original show idea and that's going to be driven by personality, or I'm going to piggyback off of somebody else's, like I said, with the podcast idea. And so I'm going to tap into somebody else who's got their own original live streaming talk show or their own live streaming, whatever show that it is. And they go live every Monday at 5 and, they're broadcasting, they do 50 times a year. And I know that I can buy into that. I could see that evolving and having brands piggyback off of that as well. In general, I think that you'll see more brands do live streaming like that. But I do think that probably more brands will still get success from the replay. I do think that from a marketer standpoint, the cool value of live streaming is, yes, you can make people engaged in the moment, and yes, you can keep people engaged for potentially quite a long period of time, right? People that are on a live stream, if they've sat that long and they watched to a certain period of time, that show me a pretty good, strong indication of, interest of some sort. And so I think that there will be some element of that in the moment, but I do think that a lot of that will be then really cool content that a lot of people will discover after the fact. And so I think that live streaming fundamentally is still just to go live. People still watch Saturday Night Live episodes after they've been recorded. So I would love to see, people watch sports events recorded. So I would love to see live be used as a replacement for television broadcasting. I really do believe that. I think that everybody who has a connection to the internet and has a phone and has a camera can become a media company. And the YouTube CEO said something very similar in her keynote, and that kind of moved me as well, because that's really what it is today. And the aesthetics of live versus replay, they kind of go hand in hand. But knowing that we can save live video and people can consume it later, that's great. So I think that the future of live for a marketer is probably going to be a combination of the two. But the best ones will tap into people who they can hitch themselves onto, right? Those big old trucks like yourself who could command an audience that they can figure out a good way to get their message in front of.
Yeah, I mean, I had thought a lot about our conversation after we met last week at VidCon. I just see what's successful with live video now. It's sports and it's news broadcasts, anything that's timely. Now, I understand that you could go live, and with the understanding that this is going to be recorded, I just wonder if that's a better option than just shooting it like it's going to be recorded and just leaving it on YouTube. So I'm just struggling, and I'm sure this will be solved in the next couple of years, is will effective live streaming get beyond that timeliness element, even though we know it can be saved? I don't know if you have any thoughts.
Yeah, I do actually have thoughts. And so what I will push back on you as is I would say 75 to 80% of sitcom, scripted comedies are in the 90s, but arguably even up to today, are all filmed in front of like some type of live studio audience, because there is a dimension, there is an element of being a performer and having instant feedback. And so, you know, obviously I'm very close to the live streaming community, so I get to see it maybe a little bit. I get to like see how the sausage is made a little bit others, but I really do see, and it's weird, right? Like, because you and I are just sitting here in front of our cameras,
Live.
no different, right? Live, right? And you know, I don't know how many people are watching or if anybody at all, but like we're live recording, no different than you know, this girl Evie Y, who is a star of the Roker Media live streaming network, and it's got her own show on You Now. She's doing the same thing. Like, she's using her webcam and she's broadcasting to people, but when that green light comes on her laptop, it's like another world, and all of these people have her juiced up. And it's the hearts and it's the comments that are feeding in there, but it's that live feedback that I think makes it so awesome. And so I think that I think that sports and news are absolutely very timely, because it's relevant as a viewer to make me want to tune in. But there's definitely a ton of room for the live streaming and the original programming around live streaming content for other shows. I think that like the camera system and the programming that has to be on, like, that's why Saturday Night Live is fundamentally like a front-facing shot, you know, shoot most of the time, right? They don't have, you know, it's very hard to be able to set up live action just like a play, right? There's not a lot of live action plays. So I think that, you know, we might see a crop of people who will want to focus more on live and doing more around that, and producing it live. But I think that you will see this combination, this hybrid type, very much the way that like some of the sitcoms were, where you'd have that live element and maybe adding that more. I think it'd be cool to like see somebody who does all of that in one, right? Like take the live and just live stream straight on, but knowing that there's like other cameras doing other angles at any time. So I think that there's a lot of room for evolution around that. But I think that the feedback and the feeding you that some people have is really interesting. But then the others is kind of just like a value, right? So I think a lot of the Twitch streamers and people, like, I think those are the people that I think about, that I think that really they're playing with other people anyways in a lot of their games. They're playing with their own community, and sort of kind of like, I think that, yeah, they kind of thrive on being able, you know, knowing that somebody else is watching them in that way. But I kind of like think that they all think that they're, you know, like pro athletes in some way, right? It's like, hey, come and watch us, and just know that there's like randos that are going to be interested in like watching the cool,
and they do watch
shots that they do, and they do. Yeah. We were talking with T-Pain. We met with T-Pain when I was out in LA. And he's now one of the fastest growing Twitch channels right now. He just went and played like Deadmau5 on Twitch. Deadmau5 is a really big gamer, I guess. And so it's really funny to hear like the two of them are like now meeting up and texting, you know, two totally different types of people in the industry that are like, they have this mutual interest around like building Twitch businesses and realizing and uncovering this power. So it's pretty cool.
All right, Nick, man, I feel like I can go another hour just talking about these subjects, but we have to wrap it up. It's been about an hour. I really want to, you know, thank you for joining me. We got to do this again as things evolve and potentially as we work together, because you know, there's more to this live streaming that we feel pretty strongly about. There's more to influence marketing and how these are all these things are coming together. So would love to have you you know, again in the next couple of months or even sooner as things develop.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks for having me.
All right, Nick, it's been a pleasure.